presentation. Hope all of you well. Let me pull up the PowerPoint presentation and then share my screen with you. Bear with me one moment.
Thank you. And what I'm going to do is put some information about Fairfax County government in chat while Nhu-An does that. So let me get that information for everybody.
And let me know if you can see it, Anne.
Not yet. And I know Justin made you co-host, so you should be able to share.
Get out of it.
Okay. Justin, if you can lend a hand here, that'd be great.
Yep.
I think I got it.
There you go.
You know?
Now it's come. Yep.
Okay, perfect. Let me just
There you go. Just click that little guy and you'll have it.
I'll turn on my video. Can you still
Perfect.
hear me?
You're perfect. We can see the presentation.
There you go.
And we're good.
Okay,
Yep, you're good.
perfect.
Good to go.
Thank you so much. All right. Hi and good morning, everyone. I'm so excited that you're here today and welcome to the first workshop of the day, how to apply for Fairfax County jobs. As Ann mentioned, my name is Nhu-An White. I'm an HR analyst with the Fairfax County Department of Human Resources Employment Division. Since they were gracious enough, JCA was gracious enough to allow me the floor for the next 45 minutes. I do want to do a quick shameless plug and say, wherever you are in your career search, whether it's fully immersed in the search or you're tinkering of making a career switch, I truly hope you think about and consider Fairfax County for your next career journey. My colleague, Sakina Parma, will tell you lots more about us, but here at Fairfax County, we have over 50 agencies, over 12,000 dedicated staff, and we have we serve over 1 million residents here. So what that means is there are many rewarding career opportunities here with Fairfax County that are not only impactful, but truly make a difference in people's lives. So again, I hope you think about and consider Fairfax County as you're looking for new opportunities. But back to our regular programming. On the agenda for today, I'll talk a little bit about the employment division and our role within the county. I'll go over the application basics as well as tips, the application tips I'll actually sprinkle across the presentation today. I'll also provide you with an overview of our hiring process as well as interviewing process, and I'll close it out by answering any questions you may have for me at the end of the presentation. But before we start, Anne, if you could run the poll for me, I just wanted to ask a question as far as your experience, if at all yet, in your career search with specifically Fairfax County in the past year. So which of the following statements best applies to you as it relates to the Fairfax County job application within the past year? And so there are 4 different answer options. And if you could let me know, just so I can get a good gauge of where you are and, what your experience thus far has been and your furthest stage you've gotten in the county hiring process. So if we could run that for the next maybe 15, 20 seconds, that'll be great. And if you could respond, that'll be excellent.
That's great. It's running right now and we're getting some replies.
And then, Anne, do I end the poll or you end the poll?
I'm going to end the poll right now for you, and I'm going to tell you the results.
Awesome.
We have 76% of the people have not submitted an application.
Okay.
We have 17% who submitted an application, but they were not placed on a referral list. 4% submitted an application and were replaced on a referral list, but were not selected for an interview. And then we have 3% who submitted an application, were placed on a referral list and selected for an interview.
Okay, awesome. So
Cool.
The majority of you looks like have had some type of experience applying to Fairfax County. So hopefully most of any questions that you may have will be answered throughout this presentation. Thank you for that, Anne.
You're welcome.
Alrighty, so next up, I'll talk a little bit about the Employment Division. So Fairfax County Department of Human Resources Employment Division, we're responsible for all core services of our job announcements, recruitment, and selection for open as well as promotional job vacancies. We currently have 7 HR analysts supporting over 50 agencies, as I mentioned earlier. On a yearly basis, we receive well over 140,000 applications per year. And on a weekly basis, we post at least 70 job openings. So there's always, again, like I mentioned, a plethora of opportunity available for you to review and apply to. In calendar year 2024 alone, we received 2,071 views per job posting. We had 3,039 total hires. Of those, 101 were veterans hires, and our time to hire was 70 days. The time to hire, the bottom number, the 70 days, does not include our public safety agencies such as Fire and Rescue, Police Department, and our 911 center, only because they have a more strenuous and lengthy background investigation process that can take up to 3 months. So talking about the benefits, the basics, where to apply at Fairfax County government. There are 2 access points. We here at Fairfax County, we use a job application system called Government Jobs. And again, as I mentioned, there are 2 ways to access it and view our job postings. It's either through the Fairfax County website or the Government Jobs website directly. So if you utilize the Fairfax County website, www.fairfaxcounty.gov, that will take you directly to the Government Jobs platform. For visualization purposes, this is what the county's main page looks like. From there, you click on Jobs. That will take you to the Jobs career page. And then click on Current Openings. And then once you click on the current openings, that will take you to the Government Jobs website, as I mentioned. Again, the Government Jobs website houses all of our current openings that you can review. A couple things to note about our job announcements here at Fairfax County. Any new job opportunities are posted on Saturdays at 12:01 a.m. They close, every job announcement has a closing date or a deadline, so to say, and they always close on a Friday at 11:59 p.m. Typically, our job announcement or job postings are advertised for 2 weeks. That's the standard posting length of a job announcement. Some are longer, some are shorter, depending on the position that we're advertising. For those that we advertise longer, such as social workers or nurses or engineers, those are simply because we consider those more harder to fill type positions. You may see some administrative assistant positions, I should say, that may be posted for a shorter time, and the minimum opening time would be 7 days. As you're perusing our job page, you can sort by job title, salary, the closing date, as well as the posted date. You can also use the filter function and filter for jobs by the job category, the department, the location, as well as job number. And then lastly, you can use the search function that you see here. The search bar allows for you to enter in any keywords of your liking. And then those positions that are similar to the keywords that you enter in, whether it's in the title or in the actual job posting itself, will then populate on your end to further review. The first recommendation we always tell candidates to do is set up job alerts. Job alerts is essentially an automated email notification that you can set up yourself in order to receive job notifications of your interest. So in order to set up job alerts, you click on the menu button at the top left corner. Once you click on that, that will generate the menu options. Click on the job alerts link, and then that will take you to the job alerts webpage. The webpage or the job alerts mechanism allows for you to select up to 118 different job categories, anything from education, facilities management, legal or law, business, etc., engineering, etc. You can select as many or as little job categories as you'd like. Once you fill out the job interest card by filling it out by entering your first and last name as well as email address, as well as click on the submit button, that will initiate the job alert subscription. So job alert subscriptions are valid for 1 year. You can make any modifications to your job alerts selections or settings at any point in time. As the year inches up closer to the expiration, you will receive a follow-up email from us inquiring whether you would like to continue the subscription or cancel the job alert subscription. All right, next up, I'll talk a little bit about creating an applicant profile. I do want to notate at this juncture, so you are aware, here at Fairfax County, when you're applying to our jobs, the only official documentation we review is the actual application profile or application that you're submitting, not your resume. So though we allow for applicants to add or upload a resume to your application, we do not review it during the screening process. So please keep that in mind as we go on to the next slides here. So as you're perusing a job or various jobs, once you click on a job title, that will populate the job announcement with a very thorough description of the job that you're looking at. Once you review it, you decide you're interested in it, make sure you click the apply button. That will take you to the government jobs login portal. From the government job login portal, you can either create an account, or if you already have an account, you can sign in using your username or email and entering in your password. Once you create the account, this is what it looks like once you're in the system. In order to start your applicant profile or application, you can upload your resume and then from a computer or desktop. The information from your resume will then be parsed in the various sections you see here, or steps that you see here that you will be required to complete. I always say to copy and paste the content from your resume into the application. And the reason why I say that is if you upload your resume, some of the content from your resume may not get parsed directly into the required or specified fields. Based on your resume formatting, for instance. But if you just copy and paste from your resume into the individual steps here that you see, it's much easier, and you don't have to go back and forth correcting any misparsed, I would say, information. Again, you'll be required to complete several steps here. For instance, some are required, I should say, and some are optional. But for instance, the required fields are your personal information, your work history, your education information. Additional information is optional, as well as references, as well as attachments. And then at the end, you'll be asked to answer agency-wide as well as supplemental questions. Questions are required to be completed. Again, really important that you understand that the application is the primary tool we use here to evaluate your candidacy and qualifications. Next up, I want to go into the different sections or steps that you will have to complete. I would say it's pretty self-explanatory, but I want to mention a couple of things that we always see, a couple of missteps we always see applicants do on their end. So hopefully you don't fall into those quirks. So first up is the general information or personal information section. Make sure you please include your legal first and last name. A lot of times we see people who either abbreviate their name, use nicknames. Again, the reason why we want for you to use your legal first and last name is because the application is the official documentation we use not only for the screening process, but also for the onboarding process. So make sure that is accurate and up to date, as well as an address that is current. Though the phone number section is optional, I do always tell candidates to make sure you include an updated phone number, only because if you get contacted for an interview, the hiring department will either contact you via phone or email. So make sure, though it's optional, you include a phone number. Next up, you'll be required to complete the work experience section. Everything is quite self-explanatory. Anything that is a required field will be marked with an asterisk, so you will need to definitely complete it. The one thing I do want to note is because we calculate years of experience by hours worked per week, as well as your start and end date per employment, please include not only your hours per week worked, but also the start and end date of each employment. And then obviously the most important part of the work experience section is including the duty summary. For the duty summary, don't just describe what you've done or what you've accomplished. Make sure you detail, and provide detailed information as far as the scope of the work so that we can get a good gauge of what not only your experience has been, but also what the depth of your experience has been. And again, so we get the big picture. The other section that is required is your education information. So again, those pieces that are required to be filled out are marked in asterisks. But the one item I want to make sure you know is if you include a start and or end date, to also include and indicate whether or not you've graduated. Because a lot of times we have candidates that either include a start date, but they leave the end date out, or they include an end date, but not a start date, or whatever the case is. And we don't know whether or not, we wouldn't know whether or not you've graduated if you do not indicate it. Again, only if you include a start and end date, please make sure you include whether or not you've graduated. The additional information section is optional. You're not required to add any additional information, but if you choose to do so, that will allow for you to add any attachments pertaining to any certifications or licenses that you possess, any additional skills that you would like to include that you don't mention in the actual application, and then any languages that you speak, as well as any other general information that you'd like to include. Again, this is an optional field. You don't have to include it, but you're certainly more welcome to do so. Attachments. So as I mentioned before, attachments such as a resume that you attach, a cover letter, a copy of your license or certifications, you can attach those, but those are not used for reviewing or screening purposes on the Department of Human Resources side. Again, the only item we review is the application itself, not any attachments that you may include. At the end of the application, you'll also be asked to answer agency-wide as well as supplemental questions. Bear with me one second. So for agency-wide questions are job-related information that we use to provide statistics needed to evaluate our recruitment program and for statistical reports required by state, local, and federal agencies. So those questions pertain, for instance, to whether or not you're a current or former Fairfax County government employee. It will ask about your employment eligibility, any family members that you have made with the Fairfax County government here, or how you've learned about our job openings. Supplemental questions, on the other hand, they are also job-related information, but they pertain to are in order for us to evaluate your education, training, and experience as it relates to the job that you're applying for. Once you complete all those steps, You'll then be asked to certify your application by clicking the green Accept and Submit button. Please know that you will receive a confirmation email acknowledging receipt of your application. If you do not receive a confirmation email, so make sure, well, number one, make sure you check your email inbox after you submit an application. If you received a confirmation, that is great. That means your application was submitted successfully. But if you do not receive a confirmation email from us, please make sure you go back and reapply or redo your application, because that means we did not receive or successfully received your application. So I sprinkled some tips throughout the presentation so far already, but I want to mention a couple more items if you don't mind. The number one thing, and it sounds super simplistic, I know, but we always tell candidates to please review and study the job announcement, only because it has a wealth of information. Not only will it provide to you what the day-to-day duties are, but also what the requirements and or preferred requirements are. I'll go over each of these sections in a minute, but again, the number one thing I say is review the job announcement. If there's anything that pertains to you and you have, make sure you highlight those and speak to those on your actual application. A lot of times we get frequent flyers. We always call frequent flyers that they just apply to everything with a standard application. So with that, you may not get picked because you've had a standard application that you're not tailoring to the job announcement that you're applying to. So again, review and study the job announcement. So here, well, let me go back. This is what a standard or typical job announcement may look like. I'll start with the top. It will always list the salary, the job type, the department, the closing date. Again, remember, the closing date is important. This is the date that you need to submit the application by. If you try to submit it at midnight on April 4th, you won't be able to get that application in. Make sure you give yourself enough time to submit an application. But the other thing I want to mention is make sure you check the salary, okay? So we will never go below the minimum. We will never go above the maximum. So make sure the salary is something that you are livable with, right? And then also make sure you pay attention to the location. So if that's a location that you would like to work at or travel to. But next up, in the job announcement, you'll see a very detailed description of what the job does on a day-to-day basis. Sorry, give me 1 second. These questions are popping up and it's messing up my screen. Bear with me 1 second, guys. Sorry.
No, that's okay. And I'm keeping track of the questions. So I'm putting them into a Word file. I'll be able to ask you those questions.
Awesome. Thanks.
Sure.
Yeah. So again, to the job announcement, that's the descriptor of what the job does on a day-to-day basis, what your duties will be on a day-to-day basis. Again, what we mean by review and study the job announcement is look at those different duties that the job will be performing, highlight any items that pertain to you that you've either done or that you're interested in doing. But if you've done any of these, make sure those are highlighted in the application that you're submitting. Speak to those experiences and or skill sets that the job announcement is reflecting in your actual application that you're submitting. Then you'll see a section called Employment Standards, where we'll list the minimum qualifications. Please know that you must meet the minimum qualifications in order for us to consider you. If you meet the minimum qualifications, then go ahead and apply. If you meet the preferred qualifications, even better. I always say at this juncture for preferred qualifications, just remember, it's just a wish list of what the hiring department is looking for. If you meet only a few, 1, 2, 3, whatever the case is, but not all, still put your hat in the ringer, still apply, because every and each job announcement is a new opportunity. You'll be competing against different candidates that may have the skill sets that we're looking for, but they may not have it, and you may have more than them. So make sure you review the preferred qualifications, but think of it as just a wish list. You don't have to have it. If you have it, great, but you don't necessarily need to in order for us to consider you. Necessary special requirements are pertaining to any background checks that are required for the position. We'll always also include physical requirements so candidates understand what is required physically, if at all, for the position. And then a selection procedure is always listed as well. Here at Fairfax County, we always have a panel interview. So you will always see that under our selection procedure here. And some positions, they may include an exercise. It may be a practical exercise or it may be a technical exercise that they administer during the interviewing process. At the end of our job announcements, we always have supplemental questions. And I always tell candidates, review the supplemental questions because A, they pertain to the minimum qualifications, and then B, they also pertain to the preferred qualifications. And again, anything that you notate, not only the job announcement, but also in the supplemental questions, are those that are important items to the hiring agency. So again, as you're answering those questions, make sure you're also including those items in the application pertaining to your experience, skill sets, knowledge and abilities, etc. The first set of supplemental questions you'll see, they will always pertain to the minimum qualifications, so education and years of experience that are minimally qualified. And then the remainder of the question typically pertain to the preferred qualifications that you'll see. And every one of our job announcement will include supplemental questions. We always tell applicants, make sure you respond to supplemental questions, not only truthfully, but again, make sure however you answer to the supplemental questions, that those experience, skill sets, etc., that you say you have and answer that you have, that those are demonstrated on the application that you're submitting. So a couple more tips. Again, use the job announcement and supplemental questions as your roadmap. And again, use it to your advantage. There's a lot of information on the job announcement. Again, compare that to your own experience and resume and make sure it's on the application. Just a reminder, you must meet the minimum qualifications in order to be considered. And keep in mind that the preferred qualifications is just a wish list. If you don't meet all, that's not a detriment. If you only meet a few, that's okay. Still submit an application. In your work history and work experience, make sure you detail the work experience. Don't just describe what you did, but also detail how you did it and in what capacity, so we understand the scope of work, not only what you did, but the scope of work that you've performed. And again, really important because if you don't respond to the supplemental questions truthfully and match the answers to your application, some applicants may see that their application is disqualified. So make sure, again, you match the answers to your application. Try to avoid using synonyms or acronyms, I should say, only because, you know, in your world of whatever acronym you're using, it may be different to ours. Always spell it out so we know exactly what you mean. Really important, if you have relevant volunteer or non-paid experience that is relevant, again, relevant to the opportunity that you're applying to, please ensure that you include that on the application. You can either include it in the actual work history section itself, or you can include that in the additional information section that we discussed earlier. If you do include it in the additional information section, just make sure, similar to the work history section, that you include the hours worked per week and your start and end date so that we can calculate the years of experience that you have within the said volunteer experience or non-paid experience. This is typically, I think, pretty standard, but please make sure you double check your spelling, grammar, and punctuation. A lot of times I have hiring managers that are peeved when folks don't review their submission, application submission thoroughly, just because, again, shows whether or not you're detail-oriented. And then lastly, make sure you, or second to last, I should say, make sure you fully complete your applicant profile. Make sure you complete all the required fields. And again, if there are any additional information that you would like to provide pertaining and relevant to the position, feel free to do so in the additional information section. And then lastly, make sure you tailor your profile. One application profile does not fit all. So the system will only allow for you to have one application profile, unfortunately. You cannot have different versions at one time. So, but as you're applying to different opportunities here with the county, I always say, make sure you tailor it so that you highlight those experiences, skill sets, knowledge, and abilities that is pertaining to the job announcement itself, so that we know whether or not you have the experience. Next up, I wanted to briefly discuss our hiring process overview so you can see and get a glimpse of how long it typically takes and in what steps it includes. So here's an overview. As I mentioned, we typically post a job announcement for 14 days. Once a job announcement closes, the screening process or application review takes place. That can take up to 10 business days. After the 10 business days, applicants can go back into their government jobs account and then check their application status. Now, it will either show you different steps, whether you're in the minimum qualification steps, preferred qualification steps, or if you were referred. Referred means that you were placed on what we call a referral list. And a referral list is a list of the top 10 to 15 best qualified candidates that have been submitted to the hiring agency for further review and consideration. Now, during the application review process, you won't see a status. Again, you will only see an application status after the 10 business days. So make sure you note of that. If you were referred for a opportunity, you will get called either by the agency, or you get emailed by the agency if they're interested in interviewing you. If they're not interested in interviewing you, you will receive a follow-up email at the end of the recruitment process, notifying you that the recruitment has been closed or has concluded. But if you were referred, then the interview process takes place. Then an offer of employment will be made, or a contingent offer, I should say, will be made, and then we initiate a background check process. The background check process, depending on what background what check we include, whether it's a credit, criminal, child protective services check, it all varies. The length of that varies. But once an applicant passes the background checks, we then onboard you to the county. And so step 1 through 3 is typically handled by the Department of Human Resources. And then step 4 through 7 is then initiated and managed by the hiring department or agency. There are some recruitments where the hiring agency will also be part of the application review process. Lastly, if you were referred, I just wanted to briefly mention the interviewing process so you get a good glimpse and feel of what that would look like. But the hiring department, like I said, will either follow up with you via email or phone directly. That's why if you complete the application, make sure you include your phone information as well. As I mentioned before, it will always include a panel interview, typically 3 or more panel members. It's a structured format, unlike the private industry where they can ask questions in an unstructured format. They can ask candidates different questions at any point in time. We have a very structured format where the hiring agency will have a set or pre-developed interview questions that they will ask each candidate of within that recruitment process. Candidates get asked the same questions by the same panel members. This is to ensure not only validity, but also ensure that it's fair and equitable. As I mentioned before, we may also include an exercise within an interview process. And if we include an exercise, it will be posted on the job announcement so you can prepare and or, prepare accordingly, I should say. Each interview has a set allotment of time. So they will let you know you have 45 minutes for the interview to answer these questions or 1 hour for the interview to answer these questions. Again, that's across all candidates. So they receive the same amount of time across the board. And then candidates are rated. So the candidate that scores highest will then be offered the opportunity or the employment offer of employment will be extended to the person that scores the highest. So in summary, I just want to mention, again, make sure you set up your job alerts. That's, I think, the #1 thing in order to save yourself time, having to go back to our jobs or career page every Saturday when new opportunities are posted. Set up the job alerts so that you don't have to do that. Saves you an immense amount of time. Please make sure if you're interested in an opportunity that you pay attention to the closing date and submit your application well before the closing date. Make sure you compare and match the job announcement to your resume and experience. That goes back to, using that job announcement as your roadmap and highlighting all of those items, experience, skill sets, knowledge, skills, and abilities that are listed in the job announcement and that pertain to you in the actual application that you're submitting. Again, make sure you answer all supplemental questions according to your experience. And make sure your answers are detailed in the actual application that you're submitting. Remember to always include any relevant volunteer or non-paid experience. And again, tailor your profile for each and every job announcement that you are submitting an application for. And we hope to see you on Team Fairfax soon. With that concludes my part of the presentation. I do want to note, should you have any questions about the application that you submit, feel free to contact and reach out to us via this email address, dhremployment@fairfaxcounty.gov. And for any updates on employment opportunities and or general Fairfax County news, always follow us on LinkedIn as well.
That's great. Are you ready for some questions?
Yes.
Okay, I have a bunch of them for you. Nhu-An, first thing is, do you have to be a resident of Fairfax County to have a job there?
Yes, very popular question. No, you do not have to be a resident of Fairfax County.
Okay, fabulous.
You can live wherever.
Perfect.
As long as you're willing and able to come to wherever the work location is.
Good point. For networking purposes, do you know if there's an affinity group for returned Peace Corps volunteers within Fairfax County government?
I do not, but I will check.
Okay, thank you. As a federal employee who's worked in one agency for 20 years, what is the best way to share their experience on your application? Should the person break it down by different positions or put one entry focus on the skills and experience?
So I would do one entry per position, if that makes sense, because then you'll break it down into the duties, responsibilities, accomplishments that you've had per the different job titles and or positions that you had with that federal agency. The one thing I want to note, unlike the private sector and corporate world, there's no limit to our application. So it can be as lengthy as you want or as short as you want. I just always tell candidates, make sure you're succinct in your application submission. So you can have a lengthy application, but if it doesn't make sense, that's a little You know, that may be more challenging, but as long as you're succinct in your detail of your job responsibilities and what you've done at each of the various employments, the better and the more beneficial to you.
That's great. And what is saved in your default application after you have applied for a job? Is it the first application you ever submitted or the last one submitted?
It's the last one you submitted.
Okay.
Mhm.
And when someone said, when I check to see the status of my applications, the history is often inconsistent or incomplete as to whether or not I'm being considered in advance in the process. Is this review process subjective to some degree? And how do we know if there's a hiring freeze in place?
So if there's a hiring freeze, we will always notify, or if a recruitment is canceled, we will always notify candidates of such. As far as the application status, there's always 3 steps within the application process: screen for minimums, screen for preferreds, and then referred. Depending on where you are in the process, it will show whether or not you've meet the minimums, whether or not you meet the preferreds, and or if you were referred. So you should see a status, not only the step, but also the disposition or status of your application. If you don't see that, make sure you email us at dhremployment@fairfaxcounty.gov, and we can look into it.
Okay. And what do you do when you are in a specialty field and you conduct a job search, I guess, which maybe the person meant does not provide results? They put down does provide results. Is there a way to search for specialty fields?
Depending on the specialty field, yeah, sure, absolutely. Like I said, we have 118 different job categories here with the county. So if you don't see your specialty in it, I would again email us and then we can further discuss that too.
Great.
Yeah, we have like I said, up to 118 different job categories.
Wow. How far back in terms of experience should they go in the application? Does Fairfax County look at experience beyond 10 years ago?
Yes, as long as it's relevant to the job, I would say, even if it's beyond the 10-year, this typical standard 10 years, please do include it. Any relevant experience that you have, always include it.
Okay. A question, if cover letter and resume is not reviewed during screening purpose, is there opportunity to send a cover letter and resume after being selected for an interview for the hiring manager?
Yes, so if you included, like we mentioned, it's not reviewed by the Department of Human Resources, but it will be reviewed by the hiring agency once you're referred. So like I said, you can definitely include it. DHR will not review it, but the hiring agency will certainly review any cover letters and or resumes that you include. But the number one step, even to get to the referred list, is to ensure that you fully complete the application.
Good point. And I think this addresses the person who says our cover letter is required. If their application is included, we'll go to the hiring manager. And you said, yes, it will go to the hiring manager, but no, they're not required. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And this person says, I've applied to several positions Fairfax County over the past 2 years, but haven't received any responses. I'm very interested in contributing to the county and would appreciate any insight into the hiring process or how I might improve my chances.
Yes, I hope I answered that question in the presentation, but candidates won't be contacted unless they're on the referral list. In order to check your application status, though, you can always do that through the government jobs platform and logging back into your account. And just remember, you won't see a status update. Once you submit an application, you won't see an actual status update to that application until 10 days after the job announcement closes. So make sure you check back then.
Okay. And may they send you like an email and say they applied and they were just wondering what they could do better, or is that something you don't do?
We don't provide individual assistance only because we have a plethora of candidates that are that apply to Fairfax County, but I will include my email address, or Anne can include my email address in the chat. I don't mind that. But if you are interested in knowing specifically about your application status for a job that you submitted, you do have to do so through the DHR employment@fairfaxcounty.gov email address.
Okay. Is the salary range also the hiring range?
What do you mean by that?
It looks like someone uses the term salary range, and then there's another term called hiring range. Are those, do you know that word, that term?
No. So like I said, the salary range, all pay rules apply for whenever a candidate submits an application or is hired for a position. Like I said, we do not go below the minimum, but we do not go above the maximum of the advertised salary range. Anyway, but sorry, these questions keep popping up and I get distracted, but so for what's important to know is we typically, for any offers made, we go up to the mid-range or midpoint of the salary range. Anything above the mid-range, the hiring agency will need to ask for approval by the Department of Human Resources Director.
Okay, I think
If
you
that
just
makes
answered his question then. Okay.
Okay.
And then, do you all have any hybrid or remote openings? What about part-time jobs?
Yes, we have. So our county standard is, and depending on the position, obviously, our telework option is 60-40. So 3 days you can work from home, 2 days can be would have to be on site. But I do want to note, not all agencies can follow the telework program, only because some of the positions cannot afford to telework. So for instance, a nurse cannot telework, right?
Right.
Or sometimes an engineer, they have to be on site sometimes due to the projects that they are delivering. But yes, our standard county telework program offers 60-40. 60% you can telework from home, and then the remaining 40% are 2 days you have to be on site.
Okay, and this person, Nhu-An, can they save their application and use it for another job?
Yep. So once you create a profile and the last a profile that you submitted to a job announcement, that's the last saved version that will be in your account. But like I said, it's really important, and I can't stress enough that please make sure you tailor your profile per job announcement or posting that you're applying to and are interested in. Because like I said, not one applicant profile may not fit another job announcement that you're applying to, just because it may be a totally different opportunity.
Okay, and Nhu-An, we have run out of time, but
Okay.
would you please pick up at 10:41?
Okay.
It's an iPhone. If you could pick that up at 10:41, and the question is, let me go back to it. Is how often does the hiring team update the status?
Okay, perfect. Will do. Thank you all so much for your time today. I hope it was useful and informative. And like I said, I hope we see you on Team Fairfax soon.
Excellent. Thank you for being here. And I will put Nhu-An's email in chat. And everybody, again, Nhu-An is going to be in chat. She's going to start answering those questions from 10:41 on. And then if you have a question for Nhu-An, direct it directly to her now. Nhu-An, NHU-AN White, Fairfax County Government.